Thank you so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, Israel keeping up its advance against Hamas in Rafah as new video evidence comes to light of potential cooperation between Hamas and the United Nations Relief and Works Agency. And Israel again emphasizing getting the hostages released is a top priority. President Biden slapping new tariffs on key Chinese products as the White House says China cheats on its trade policies. But critics accuse the president of election year politics. Our interview with singer and songwriter Tasha Layton, nominated by K-Love for Female Artist of the Year. We're talking about her music and some tough times she's endured in her life. And a wave of baptisms and salvation sweeping across America over the weekend as many come to salvation in Christ. All those stories and more ahead today, right here on CBN NewsWatch.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
A busy Wednesday. We begin in the Middle East, where Israeli forces are keeping up their attacks against Hamas battalions in Rafah, as still more evidence comes to light about potential ties between the United Nations Relief and Works Organization and Hamas. All of this as Israel celebrated its 76th Independence Day Tuesday, looking ahead to a final victory in the war in Gaza. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brings us the story from Jerusalem.
On Israel's 76th Independence Day, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with wounded IDF soldiers. He said he was impressed by the message that several soldiers gave him: continue until the end, until a decisive victory over Hamas. He also said October 7th was a watershed moment in Israel's history.
On Simchat Torah, we endured an event on a biblical scale. Our enemies attacked us, exactly on the day when the people of Israel celebrate the completion of study from Genesis to Deuteronomy and start again.
As Israel celebrated a sober Independence Day, some positive news came with reports that the Biden administration is going ahead with a $1.2 billion arms package for Israel, including tank ammunition and mortar rounds. Last week, Biden announced the U.S. withheld a shipment of bombs to protest Israel's plans to invade Rafah. The operation to eliminate Hamas in Rafah continues at a steady pace as the IDF slowly advances against the terror group's last battalions there. Hundreds of thousands of Gazans are fleeing the war zone. Israel has long accused the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, of collaborating with Hamas. Now it's releasing video of Hamas terrorists operating next to UN vehicles at an UNRWA facility in Rafah.
Today we revealed unusual documentation of armed terrorists next to UN vehicles that were located a few days ago, carrying out shootings inside the compound of UNRWA of the UN in East Rafah.
Foreign Minister Israel Katz said on X, the UN can't hide the truth. Quote, UNRWA is an arm of the terrorist organization Hamas. At a ceremony marking Israel's Independence Day, President Isaac Herzog emphasized recovering the hostage in Gaza is a top priority for the Jewish people.
These days, we are full of the pain of bereavement, pain for the wounded, the pain for civilians uprooted from their homes, the pain for the hostages. I reiterate that there is no greater mitzvah than redeeming the captives.
But the fate of the 132 hostages still in Hamas' hands seems precarious. Mediators in Qatar say negotiations to reach a ceasefire and free hostages appear to be at a stalemate. On Tuesday, Hamas fired rockets into southern Israel, including Sderot, where thousands of Israelis marched calling for Israel to control Gaza after the war.
We want to tell everybody in Israel and everybody in the world that Gaza is very, very important to us, and it has to be, again, in Israeli hands, because if it won't be in Israeli hands, we won't finish the things that we started doing in this war.
Chris Mitchell joins us now with more from Jerusalem. So, Chris, why do so many Israelis believe it's important for Israel to be in charge of Gaza following the war?
Well, Ephraim, they really understand what happened after 2005. And actually, some of the people in the march may have been evacuated. The 2005 was called a disengagement, where Israel unilaterally pulled out of the Gaza Strip. And then what happened, 2006, Hamas won elections. 2007, they took over. And then, Ephraim, there's been wars with Hamas in 2008-9. 2012, 14, 21, and then October 7th on 2023. So what they are saying and what they believe is that they don't want Hamas to reconstitute itself inside Gaza, which is committed to Israel's destruction. Will Israelis return to the border and the kibbutzim along the border if Hamas was allowed to come or not to reconstitute itself? So even rockets today, I mean, there were rockets yesterday in Sderot. There were more rockets today. So they know that Hamas is committed to their destruction. So they believe that only Israel is the one that really can control the Gaza Strip and protect Israelis on Israel's southern border.
Chris, there are critics here in the United States who say the Biden administration's constant intervention has actually held up Israel from finishing off Hamas in Rafah. Is that the view there in Israel for some?
For many, it is. They feel like the U.S. has micromanaged the war. They believe because of that, it makes the release of the hostages less likely. The operation in Rafah has been slowed down by a few months. So instead of micromanaging Israel, they believe the pressure should be on Hamas and Qatar, the sponsor of Hamas. Which is the U.S. has been calling for a ceasefire, but what it hasn't been calling as much is a victory over Hamas, something we saw that these wounded soldiers were telling Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. So I believe that's what the majority of Israelis want. They want to have victory, and they don't want the U.S. to undermine and micromanage the war. At the same time, Ephraim, in the last several months, the Biden administration is trying to undermine the Netanyahu government, as well as pushing for a two-state solution, something Israelis and I believe a substantial majority don't want right now.
Chris, we keep hearing reports about the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, and its relationship with Hamas and terrorists. What would Israel like to see happen with UNRWA?
Well, I think they would want to see it dissolved and replaced with another organization that's not too tied by Hamas. We saw in our report, how much it's linked to Hamas when you have Hamas terrorists actually inside an UNRWA facility. And so the more as the war went on, more and more it was discovered how much Hamas and UNRWA have been connected. Some UNRWA employees participated in October 7th. Some UNRWA teachers endorsed what happened was on October 7th. And so even they found out that Hamas and UNRWA shared facilities in their main headquarters in Gaza. And what UNRWA has been doing in its schools as well is really indoctrinate a generation to try to take over all of Israel, not have a two-state solution or living side by side in peace and security. So Israel would want many nations that are supporting and funding UNRWA to stop that and believe they want to replace UNRWA with a better organization.
Israel has been getting humanitarian aid into Gaza. We've seen reports that Hamas is then stealing some of it. Is that still the case?
Exactly. I think according to the Coordination of Government Activities in the Territories, it's called COGAT. They believe they've opened all these crossings, 2 in the north, 2 in the south, the port of Ashdod. They have the floating pier that the U.S. is constructing as well. And so they believe that some of the aid that goes into Gaza gets stolen by Hamas and then many times sold on the black market. So they actually get funding from that. So Israel says that they're doing all they can to provide humanitarian aid to the people inside Gaza.
What's the latest on Israel's battles with Hezbollah along the northern border?
Well, Ephraim, just today, there's about 60 rockets that have been fired by Hezbollah into northern Israel. Israel, just 2 days ago, eliminated a top Hezbollah commander who they believe said was carrying out many attacks against Israel. In all, in the past 7 months, there's been about 30 Hezbollah commanders that have been killed by Israel. And yet there's still heavy fighting going on, as we saw today. Hezbollah is still firing missiles. And it seems like after Gaza, whenever that war is over, the goal will be go to the north. There's still about 80,000 Israelis that are out of their homes, living in hotels, probably many of them here in Jerusalem. But that's an untenable situation for Israel.
Indeed. Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem, thank you so much as always. Stay safe and know that we back here are continuing to pray for you and our entire team there on the ground in Israel. Coming up, President Biden imposing new tariffs on a range of products out of China, with the administration saying China has been cheating through its international trade practices. But critics argue the president is taking his action on tariffs for political reasons. We're going to bring you the story when we come back. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. President Biden imposed sweeping tariff increases on China Tuesday. The White House accused China of cheating in its trade policies. The move targets electric vehicles, semiconductors, and other specific products, even though Biden was a critic of tariffs under former President Donald Trump. Dale Hurd is on the story.
President Biden defended the new tariffs on Chinese products, saying that China's government handouts to its companies mean they don't have to turn a profit, giving them an unfair advantage in global trade.
For too long, it hasn't been fair. For years, the Chinese government has poured state money into Chinese companies across a whole range of industries. And when you make tactics like these, you're not competing. It's not competition, it's cheating.
Biden slapped tariffs on a range of high-tech industries, from Chinese electric vehicles, advanced batteries, solar cells, medical equipment, and on raw materials like steel and aluminum manufacturing. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesman said China opposes unilateral tariff increases that violate WTO rules and will take all necessary measures to safeguard its legitimate rights and interests. On CBN's Faith Nation, China expert Gordon Chang said tariffs don't necessarily mean higher prices for American consumers buying Chinese goods.
I think that there is a lot of exaggeration when people talk about the costs that are going to be imposed on American consumers. In 2008, China absorbed about 4/5 of the cost of the Trump tariffs. They did that through Chinese government policies, and also private exporters absorb costs. So I expect the same thing to happen this time.
The White House has targeted Chinese green technology, especially electric vehicles, when China is looking to undercut American car makers with cheaper products as demand for EVs slow.
Folks, look, I'm determined that the future of electric vehicles will be made in America by union workers, period.
6 years ago, former President Trump slapped tariffs on over $350 billion worth of Chinese imports, mostly at a 25% rate. Biden's tariffs cover only about $18 billion worth of imports, but at a much higher rate, quadrupling electric vehicle tariffs to 100%, doubling the rate on semiconductors to 50%, and tripling tariffs on steel and aluminum products. When he was running for president, Biden was a critic of Trump's tariffs, saying they were creating more pain for Americans. Tuesday, Trump called him out for waiting so long.
Where have you been for 3.5 years? They should have done it a long time ago.
Dale Hurd also reports that now that the president is running again, he is feeling the heat from unions and industries in key swing states suffering from unfair Chinese trade practices. A new poll shows Biden trailing Trump by 7 points in Michigan, where that is home, of course, to the auto industry. Still ahead, singer and worship leader Tasha Layton opens up about a suicide attempt and what she found when she hit her lowest of the low. We're going to hear that story right after this. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. K-Love Fan Award nominees are in, and recording artist Tasha Layton is nominated for Female Artist of the Year. As a solo artist, she shot up the Billboard charts with mega hits such as How Far and Look What You've Done. Her newest single is called Worship Through It, and it features Elevation Worship's Chris Brown. I sat down with her to talk about her music and her life. You were saying that you felt, looking back, you thought some parts of your life were detours. What would you say you thought was a detour? Is it touring with Katy Perry? Is it American Idol? What did you think were detours?
Yeah, most definitely American Idol. I wasn't sure why I was doing that show. But I think looking back, I can see how God used that show to sort of give me an idea of how I could be ministering outside of the church. And so when I left the show, I thought, you know, I think I'm supposed to be doing music outside of the church. And I told my pastor, and he said, you know, we've known that for years, Tasha. We've just been trying, you know, waiting for you to figure it out.
You shared dark times in your life where you were actually contemplating suicide.
Yeah.
What happened?
I had been really wounded in the church, and so I went searching. And at the end of that road of searching, I found myself to be more depressed, more isolated than I ever had felt before. And I tried to take my life. And it was at that lowest of low, though, that I realized Jesus was the only one out of all those things I searched out that had any power to transform or any power to give me true peace.
I can hear my Father singing over me. It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be okay. That's sort of the mantra that I love to hear from you in my rough moments.
Yeah.
Just blast that in.
Yes.
Like, it's gotta be okay. What was that song?
I wrote that about my suicide attempt. And so when we finished, I'll tell you a funny story about it, because I think I share so many dark moments. And I have so many people share their dark moments when we talk about that song. When we finished the demo, I was so pregnant that, you know, I recorded the demo vocal, the scratch vocal, about 30 seconds after we wrote the song. And then when I went back to record my final vocal, I was so pregnant that I couldn't sing. And so the vocal that you hear on the radio is about 30 seconds after we wrote it. But I honestly think that there's something really special about that, because the emotions were so raw in the room when we wrote it. And I believe that it really captures that.
It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay.
You know, I'm a late bloomer, if you will. I didn't even start music until I was in my 30s, and you know, didn't start having kids till I was 35. Lord, I'm so tired. But I do think that, you know, it was all God's timing, because I have something to say now. I've lived some life. I've had some hardships. My priorities are my family, my husband, and my kids. And I think that has brought a wonderful foundation to what I do in a way that I'm really grateful for, because my identity is not wrapped up in what I do or my voice or music or anything like that. I'm so firm in who I believe God made me to be. And my goal is to just bring that freedom and courage to everyone who will listen, to know who you are in Christ and to step out knowing that His timing is perfect.
Never forsaken, never abandoned, not for a second. I am safe in your hands, always and forever.
The fact that I have a beautiful family, I'm getting to do what I prayed to get to do when I was a young girl, and seeing people's lives changed every night, you can't trade that for anything. I mean, that gets me up in the morning.
There's not a broken, too broken for
So what's next?
Well, I'm on tour right now, and so we're bringing an RV so that we can bring our kids on tour. And so we have been learning all the things about RV life, and you know, what hoses go to what. You don't want to mess those up. Do you know what I mean? We're figuring it out, but it's fun, and we've had memories, and there's no greater, you know, privilege to be able to do it with your family together. And I don't have any mom guilt because I don't leave them at home, you know, so that's awesome.
Tasha Layton has more music to share. You may want to sample her single, Never. It is available wherever you purchase, download, or stream your music. Be sure and join us tonight for a special edition of Studio 5. I'm having a one-on-one conversation with Dietrich Haddon. He is getting candid about his life, and he's also talking about his latest projects, including new music and the return of Preachers of L.A. The Studio 5 special edition airs tonight on the CBN News Channel. It begins at 8 Eastern. You can also watch it on the CBN News app, or you can watch it on YouTube. Coming up, baptisms and salvations all across America last weekend. We're going to tell you what happened when we come back.
Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
A wave of baptisms and salvations at beaches and rivers across America over the weekend. Thousands joined revivalist and core group leader Jenny Weaver at Florida Siesta Key Beach in Sarasota Saturday. Weaver says the Lord gave her the words, "Summer of Baptisms." She's calling what's happening absolutely a move of God. Hundreds were also baptized at Pirates Cove Beach in California, while 130 gave their lives to Jesus in Ozark, Missouri. You can find out more of these amazing stories about these evangelistic events by going to our website. That is cbnnews.com. Well, time now for your Wednesday word, and today's word is uncomfortable. Know this, no one likes being uncomfortable, but there is no change or growth in comfort. Embrace the uncomfortable. It's temporary. There is better on the other side. That thorn in your side, the discomfort, the uncomfortable, it serves a purpose, even if you don't understand it. Well, that will do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time, as well as online, cbnnews.com. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow.